I met Mycah around 2011, and I was living with some friends, the Smethers family. You probably know them. And Mycah was actually when she moved to Hot Springs, Susan was the first person that
I met at church.
Yeah, met at Crossgate, here at Crossgate, and Mycah was kind of being mentored by Susan. Is that right? And so anyways, Susan Smethers kind of introduced us, and so at some point I kind of started finding interest in Mycah, right? It just happened at some point, and then I asked her out just to go on a few coffee dates, and a couple of our favorite things are sushi and coffee. So I remember, and this is kind of the point where we kind of disagree, but I remember our dates. I remember very well trying to lay it on very thick as far as kind of showing her that I liked her. And somehow Mycah walked away from all three of those dates not knowing that I liked her, right?
Right.
You went to Africa after that not too long ago on a mission trip with Pastor Sean's daughter, Kristen. And I remember she came back from Africa, and she came up to me after they were showing a video at church that Sunday, and I said, she came up to me and she said, "Do you want to go get sushi soon?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to." And I was kind of going through a lot of stuff at that point, and I kind of talked to Sean about it because Sean was kind of trying to put us together in some ways, and I said, "Hey, you still think it'd be a good idea for me to pursue Mycah?" And he said, "Well, I would say yes, but she's dating someone." And I said, bummer. So as we've kind of discovered our story together, like, we really have kind of seen that God's kind of protected us in some ways. And kind of when we both split ways, I had been working at church for about a year, and was dealing with addiction and a lot of brokenness, and was dealing with sin and very powerful strongholds in my life. And Mycah was also going through a pretty hard time pretty much at the same time that I didn't really know about.
Whenever I went to Africa, I was kind of talking to a guy, and those dates with Kyle, I had no idea that he was interested in me. I thought it was just a friend thing, and so I never saw him.
Guys don't hang out with girls and be friends. Let's just say that.
I never saw him giving me a second look, so I had no idea. But I came back from Africa and was dating someone, and ended up moving to Fort Smith and marrying him. And from the wedding day, we knew something wasn't right, or I knew something wasn't right. It was just a lot of, like Kyle said, a lot of brokenness through that time. I was in Fort Smith for a year, and we were married for 6 months to the day. And I dealt with a lot of unfaithfulness from him. After 6 months of going to Christian counseling by myself and trying to work through those things and fix a broken marriage, and I prayed through it and just knew the Lord was telling me that all of the things that He was doing weren't okay, and that I didn't have to stay in that, and that He had a different plan for me. So after a year of being in Fort Smith, I got to move back to Hot Springs, and came back to Crossgate my first Sunday back in town. Saw Kyle across the way in the coffee shop, and he was gonna try to dodge me and not say hi.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really know if she was like upset with me, or I didn't. We obviously ended kind of on weird terms or something like that and so anyways, I went up to her and I said, "Hey, how's marriage?" And obviously that was the worst thing to say. And,
I said, "Hey, I'm divorced."
And I was like, well, okay. Anyways, so I waited, because I had just, at that point, I had just stepped down from my position at the church, and I was, my head was spinning from just a lot of just not knowing who I was, dealing with a lot of identity crisis, and just a lot just that the Lord was taking me through. And so I withdrew for about 4 months, and occasionally would text. And so anyways, I just remember sitting in my house one day, I was like, I'm ready to go out with Mycah Wagner. And so I texted her, and I said, hey, you want to go out sometime? And so we went and got our favorite thing together. We went and got some sushi, and spent like 3 or 4 hours sitting there talking over dinner. And when we walked out, I said, hey, I said, Mycah, I like you a lot. I said, I don't want you leaving this date not thinking that I really like you. Mm-hmm. And I said, I really want to be intentional about our relationship. And so she said, I really appreciate that. And so we were actually a couple at that point, rather than not knowing. And
we've just seen several times throughout the period that we've been dating, just the way that the Lord's orchestrated so many wonderful things in our lives, both separately and then whenever He's drawn us together. And being with Kyle has been the most joyous ride I've ever been on. Whenever we first started hanging out together again, one of our first dates was going to Starbucks, and we probably sat there for 4 or 5 hours just talking through the places that we'd been in the last couple years since we hadn't talked, and like going through all of the deep details, and just really sharing our lives with each other again, and getting to know each other. And
it's one thing I love about Mycah is that just from day one, it's been a very transparent relationship, and I needed that.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, it's been really special. But Kyle asked me probably on our first or second time to hang out again, what I would be looking for in someone if I were ever to want to be in another relationship and remarry. And one of the things I remember vividly telling him, it's not a word that's not used very often, but just the way that I wanted to feel for the rest of my life if I were ever to be with a man again was to just feel cherished by him, to just feel like I was his prize, and just to know that, just like the church is Christ's bride, I wanted to feel like that for the rest of my life if I were ever to marry again. And so fast forward to several different occasions, Kyle put together an awesome surprise for me one day. I love world maps, and he found this awesome huge world map and had it made into like a big hanging sign, and
framed it up, and
yeah, it's incredible.
Got our couple journals.
So I worked night shift and came home from Little Rock one morning and walked into my room, and him and my dad had hung this huge map in my room, and Kyle had written me a letter in a journal, and told me that he cherished me. And I thought that he remembered us talking about that before, and so I was telling him how special that was to me, and he hadn't even remembered our conversation about that. And fast forward to another time, going through some counseling and just working through some problems that I've experienced in my life. Lady that I've never met, who was doing my counseling, I was explaining to her mine and Kyle's relationship and just the way that the Lord has blessed us through it, and she told me, well, it sounds like He cherishes you. And several other times, even Susan Smithers has told me that, and she had no idea about any of those stories. And just the fact that that's a word that we don't use in our culture. It's such a cliche word, but it's just not a common word. And the fact that, I've heard that so many times is just, to me, like the Lord's blessing on our relationship.
Just the details that we feel like the Lord is interested in, just shows His love. We're just grateful for that. So.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've kind of been able to unpack as our relationships come together is just the fact that if the Lord would have not moved us apart at that time when we first got together, we really would have seen just some destruction. I know for myself, I would have not honored her the way that God desires me to and has called me to. And God uses, I believe that God doesn't waste a hurt. We both believe that. And we love in Romans where Paul says that God works all things for the good of those who love Him and are called to His purpose. And more than anything, we want to point others to Jesus through our relationship. And does not mean that we don't still struggle, and we deal with those things as we come up to Him. And thankfully, God's put so many people around us that have counseled us and showed us the Lord and showed us how to not put each other first, but to put the Lord first. And that's our goal. And we're just grateful that y'all are here celebrating our wedding with us and just a part of our lives. And we're excited for the future. Thank y'all.
So what are we doing on the 7th floor of a high-rise apartment, praying for more?